The sun was sinking low behind the jagged horizon, painting the desert in shades of fire and blood. Dust swirled in the dry wind, curling around the wooden facades of the town like restless ghosts. At the edge of the town, a stable stood alone, its gates creaking in the dying breeze. This was no ordinary stable. It belonged to Madeline Carter, a widow whose husband had disappeared under mysterious circumstances a year ago, leaving her with nothing but her pride, her land, and a stallion unlike any other, a beast so untamed it had thrown every man who dared mount it. Word had spread quickly. Every cowboy in the county knew of the challenge. 25 men had tried. 25 men had failed. And still, Madeline stood there, boots in the dust, arms crossed, eyes as sharp as a hawk's, daring anyone to prove they were worthy. The townsfolk whispered, as the latest contender returned. Battered and humiliated, his pride shattered, his body bruised, Madeline's lips curled in a small, almost imperceptible smile. She had not given up hope. Her stallion was no ordinary animal. It tested men, sought out weakness, and punished arrogance without mercy. Then, like a shadow cutting through the fading light, a lone figure appeared at the outskirts of town. His hat was tilted low, concealing most of his face. Dust clung to his coat and boots, signs of countless days spent riding through the unforgiving wilderness. He carried no fanfare, no boasting, no promise of glory. The whispers died as people realized he wasn't like the others. The cowboy approached the stable slowly, each step measured. When he stopped before Madeline, he didn't speak immediately. He only lifted his hat slightly, revealing sharp eyes that had seen more than most men could imagine. Madeline's gaze hardened. "If you're a real cowboy, prove it on my stallion," she said, her voice low, carrying a warning that chilled even the bravest of hearts. The wind caught her hair, whipping it around her face like a warning flag. The cowboy's lips curved into a faint smirk. He didn't hesitate. He walked straight to the stallion, running his hand along the horse's neck as if greeting an old friend. The animal snorted, nostrils flaring, muscles tensing under his hand. He could feel the raw energy, the wild spirit coiled like a spring ready to explode. The townsfolk held their breath. Madeline's eyes never left the cowboy, skeptical yet unwilling to hide a spark of curiosity. Could this man, stranger, quiet, untested, succeed where 25 others had failed? The sun disappeared behind the horizon, and the desert fell into a fragile twilight. The challenge was about to begin, and somewhere deep in the heart of the stallion, a storm waited to be unleashed. 99.4% of you watching aren't subscribed yet. Only 0.5% have joined the ride. Don't miss out. Hit subscribe and become part of the story. The night had settled over the desert like a dark velvet curtain, swallowing the last traces of sunlight and leaving the town in an uneasy shadow. The air was heavy with anticipation, the quiet only broken by the soft clatter of hooves against dry earth and the occasional whisper of wind through the wooden buildings. Inside the stable, the stallion pawed at the ground, muscles coiled like springs beneath a sleek, glistening coat. Every hair on its body stood as if sensing the danger that was about to unfold. The horse's dark eyes reflected both challenge and fury, a silent warning to anyone foolish enough to underestimate it. The lone cowboy moved with measured steps, his hands steady and sure, revealing no fear. He approached the stallion and ran his fingers along the animal's neck, feeling the heat of its body, the raw power radiating like an electric current through his veins. Unlike the others, he did not shove the horse into submission, he whispered quietly, a low, calm tone that seemed to resonate with the stallion's wild spirit. Madeline watched, arms crossed, her eyes narrowed. Most men try to dominate him. They fail because they don't respect him, she muttered under her breath. Her heart, however, betrayed a flicker of hope. There was something different about this one, something she could not yet name. The cowboy swung himself onto the saddle, his movements smooth, deliberate, as if he had ridden 100 horses before, yet with a grace that suggested a profound connection with this one moment. The stallion reared, nostrils flaring, and the earth beneath them trembled. Dust rose in clouds around them, painting the scene in shades of gold and amber from the lanterns lining the stable. The townsfolk pressed closer, holding their breath. They had heard the stories of men thrown violently, of broken bones and shattered egos. But this was something else. The stallion bolted, spinning and twisting, testing the cowboy's balance, strength, and resolve. The rider's body moved as if in perfect harmony with the horse. Each jerk and buck countered with fluid precision. It was a dance of danger, a battle of wills played out in the silent darkness. Hours, or perhaps minutes, time had lost all meaning, passed as the stallion challenged the man relentlessly. It leaped, it bucked, it spun, trying to rid itself of the intruder. Sweat mixed with dust on the cowboy's face, and every muscle burned with effort. Yet he did not falter. He did not shout. He did not fight with brute force. Instead, he became a part of the stallion's movement, a shadow of its rhythm, earning its grudging respect with each calculated shift of weight. Madeline's eyes widened. She had never seen such a bond forged in the fire of pure chaos. The stallion had thrown warriors, brutes, and cowards alike. Yet this man, silent and composed, rode with a mastery that bordered on the impossible. Finally, with a forceful yet controlled leap, the stallion stopped, chest heaving, eyes wild but accepting. The cowboy sat tall, hand gripping the reins loosely, breathing steadily, unshaken. He had passed the first true test, not with strength, not with violence, but with patience, respect, and understanding. The crowd erupted in a stunned murmur. Madeline took a cautious step forward, heart pounding, as if realizing that the impossible might just have become possible. She had not spoken a word since issuing the challenge, but now her voice broke through the tense night. You may have a chance, but the real test isn't just staying on him. The real trial is surviving what comes next. A low, foreboding wind swept through the town, carrying with it the scent of sagebrush and danger. Somewhere in the hills beyond, coyotes howled, echoing like a warning. The cowboy, unshaken, merely nodded, eyes fixed on the darkness ahead, ready to face whatever came next. Tonight was only the beginning. The stallion had accepted him, but the road to proving oneself in the unforgiving West was far from over. Shadows lengthened, secrets whispered among the tumbleweeds, and somewhere, unseen, forces were already moving to test the courage of the man who dared face a widow's challenge. The night had deepened into a velvet darkness, broken only by the occasional flicker of lanterns swinging gently in the wind. The town seemed to hold its breath, caught between awe and fear, as the cowboy and the stallion stood in the quiet stable, the aftermath of their first trial lingering in the dust and sweat-scented air. But the challenge was far from over. Madeline stepped closer, boots crunching softly on the gravel, her eyes, sharp and unyielding, fixed on the cowboy with an intensity that made the shadows around them seem alive. "The stallion may have accepted you," she said, her voice low and deliberate. "But surviving him is nothing compared to surviving this town, and the memories that haunt it." The cowboy tilted his head slightly, listening. There was no fear in his gaze, only a calm awareness. He sensed the weight of unspoken stories, the secrets buried in every corner, in every gaze of the townsfolk who lingered just beyond the edge of the light. "You don't know what you're asking," Madeline continued. "I've lost more than I can bear. Men, family, trust. This town is not forgiving, and neither am I. You'll need more than skill to survive what comes next." A cold wind swept through the stable, carrying with it the faint echo of gunshots from years past, of screams swallowed by the desert, of promises broken in blood and dust. The cowboy tightened his grip on the reins, his jaw set, unshaken. He knew that the road to proving himself was not just through physical endurance. It was through confronting the shadows that clung to the town like a persistent fog. As he guided the stallion out of the stable, the crowd parted, a mixture of fear and fascination etching their faces. Every step across the wooden bridge into the open square was deliberate, each movement measured yet fluid, like a predator stalking unseen prey. The town's dark corners seemed to watch, as if testing him, whispering reminders of failures long past. Then, from the shadows of the saloon, a voice called out, rough, mocking, dripping with derision. It belonged to one of the men who had tried the stallion and failed weeks before, a brute named Clayton. His face was scarred, eyes gleaming with a mixture of hatred and amusement. "So, you think you're different, huh?" Think you can ride that beast where we all failed? The cowboy didn't respond immediately. He tilted his hat slightly, letting the lantern light catch the edge of his jaw. Silence stretched between them, tense as a drawn bowstring. Then, without a word, he nudged the stallion forward, every step deliberate. Every eye in the square following him like a predator tracking prey. Clayton laughed, a low, cruel sound that echoed off the wooden buildings. You'll fall. We all fell, and when you do, it'll hurt worse than you ever imagined. The cowboy didn't flinch. The stallion snorted, muscles coiling like springs, ready to bolt at the slightest provocation. It was a battle of wills now, not just between man and horse, but between the past and the present, between fear and courage, between those who surrendered to life's brutality and the one who refused to bend. Suddenly, the ground shook slightly, a distant rumble growing louder. Dust rose in miniature storms around the town as if the desert itself were aware of the tension. The stallion reared instinctively, ears pinned back, nostrils flaring, muscles taut with anticipation. The cowboy's grip was steady, movements fluid, heart synchronized with the thunder of the beast's heartbeat. Madeline watched, breath held as a strange silence fell. It was not just the physical danger, the stallion, the townsfolk, the mocking rival. It was the weight of history pressing down on them all. Every man who had failed before had carried more than pride. They carried their fears, their regrets, their broken dreams. And now, standing in the midst of it, the cowboy carried none of those. With a sudden, breathtaking motion, the stallion bolted forward, kicking up a storm of sand and gravel. Clayton's laugh turned to a shout as he stumbled backward, while townsfolk scattered to the edges, eyes wide with both terror and awe. The cowboy's body moved as one with the horse, balancing, guiding, anticipating every buck and spin, every leap and twist. Hours, or perhaps only moments, stretched into an eternity as they raced through the town, past shadows of the past, past whispers of the dead and forgotten. Every turn tested the cowboy's patience, his instincts, his very soul, and through it all, the stallion moved with a strange, begrudging respect, recognizing something it had never encountered in all its years of fury. A man unbroken, unafraid, and wholly present. By the time they returned to the stable, sweat and dust coating both rider and horse, the crowd was silent. Even Clayton, eyes wide with disbelief, said nothing. The impossible had happened. The cowboy had endured not just the raw, untamed power of the stallion, but the weight of every shadow that haunted the town, and he had emerged unshaken. Madeline stepped forward, her expression unreadable. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly, she nodded. You may have passed the first trials, she whispered, but the road ahead will test more than your strength. It will test your heart, and in this town, even courage can bleed. The wind swept through the town again, colder now, carrying the scent of distant storms and distant blood. Somewhere in the hills a lone wolf howled, a reminder that the West held no mercy, and that only those who faced it fully, without hesitation, without fear, could hope to survive. The cowboy dismounted, patting the stallion's neck gently. He looked at Madeline, then at the dark horizon beyond the town, and in his steady gaze there was a silent promise. Whatever trials awaited, he would face them. Alone or not, he would endure. And somewhere, deep in the desert, the shadows shifted. They were waiting. Dawn crept over the jagged horizon, painting the desert in muted shades of gold and crimson. The town lay quiet, almost suspended in time, as if the night had left a lingering breath of tension that refused to dissipate. The cowboy stood near the stable, the stallion shifting beneath him, muscles still tense from the previous night's trials. Madeline emerged from the shadows, her silhouette framed against the rising sun. She moved with a careful grace, boots crunching softly on the gravel. Her eyes, sharp and unreadable, fixed on the cowboy. You've survived the first tests, she said quietly. But the next challenge isn't just the horse or the town. It's me. The cowboy raised an eyebrow but said nothing. He had learned that in this town, words were often weapons, and silence often carried more weight than any boast. He could sense the storm beneath her calm exterior, a storm forged from loss, betrayal, and secrets that had hardened her soul. Madeline led him to the outskirts of her property, where the desert opened into a canyon, jagged cliffs rising like sentinels. A narrow path wound between rocks and boulders, treacherous and unforgiving. "The men who came before you," she said, voice dropping to a whisper, "did not fail because of the stallion. They failed because they could not survive the trials of the canyon, or the truths that lie hidden there." The cowboy's eyes narrowed. He sensed danger not just in the terrain, but in the weight of her words. Yet without hesitation he followed, Stallion in tow, moving with the quiet confidence of a man who had faced death and emerged unshaken. As they entered the canyon, the air grew colder, the wind sharper, carrying the scent of earth and iron. Jagged rocks loomed on either side, casting shadows that twisted like fingers reaching for them. The path narrowed, forcing the stallion to pick each step carefully. One false move could send them tumbling into the abyss. Suddenly the ground shifted beneath them. Rocks loosened, tumbling down the cliffs with a thunderous roar. The cowboy tightened his grip on the reins, guiding the stallion with precision, each movement a delicate negotiation with death itself. Dust and stones flew, striking him, stinging his skin, but he did not flinch. He had learned long ago that fear could be a trap, and hesitation a death sentence. Halfway through the canyon, Madeline stopped abruptly. She turned to him, eyes darkening. "This is where it begins," she said. "The truth I've carried. The truth that has kept men from proving themselves worthy." She paused, as if weighing her next words. "I have been betrayed. By men I trusted, by men who thought I was weak, and now I need someone who can face that darkness, not just ride through it." The cowboy nodded, understanding dawning in his eyes. It was never just about the horse, never just about proving skill or courage. It was about enduring human treachery, confronting pain, and emerging stronger, unbroken. A distant sound echoed through the canyon. A gunshot. Then another. The hairs on the cowboy's neck rose. From the rocks above, shadows emerged. 3 men, armed and dangerous, faces twisted with greed and vengeance. They were remnants of those who had tried the stallion before. Men who had failed and returned to claim what they thought was theirs: power, pride, and revenge. Without hesitation, the cowboy spurred the stallion forward, moving with fluid grace, dodging rocks and bullets alike. The horse's hooves struck the canyon floor with a rhythmic force, dust rising in clouds, blending with the chaos of the attack. The cowboy twisted, ducked, and returned fire with calm precision, each shot calculated, each move measured. Madeline watched from a ledge above, heart pounding. She had not realized until now how much skill, courage, and instinct this man possessed. He was not just surviving, he was mastering every trial, every danger, every shadow cast by the past. The fight raged through the canyon, echoing against the stone walls. The men fell one by one, either by the cowboy's skill or their own missteps, as the stallion leaped and twisted, responding to every subtle command. Time seemed to stretch, each second a lifetime, every heartbeat a drum of tension. Finally, as the last attacker fell, silence reclaimed the canyon. The dust settled, the sun climbed higher, and the cowboy, breathing steadily, guided the stallion to a stop. He had faced the physical danger, yes, but more importantly, he had faced the treachery and malice that haunted Madeline's life. And he had not wavered. Madeline descended to meet him, her expression softer now, tinged with awe and something resembling hope. "You've done what no other man could," she whispered. "You've survived the horse, the town, and the shadows of my past. But the final test is not here, nor in the canyon. It's inside yourself, and it will demand everything you have." The cowboy dismounted, patting the stallion's neck gently. He looked at Madeline, then at the canyon stretching behind them, and for the first time, a small smile touched his lips. He had endured the impossible, yet he knew the greatest challenge was still ahead, the one that would define not just his skill, but his heart, his resolve, and his destiny in this harsh, unforgiving land. And somewhere, beyond the horizon, the desert held its breath, waiting for the final reckoning to unfold. The desert sun hung high in the sky, burning down upon the town with relentless heat. The canyon had faded behind them. A dark memory of trials survived, but the true challenge still loomed. Madeline stood at the edge of her property, arms folded, eyes unwavering as she studied the cowboy. The stallion shifted nervously, sensing the tension, muscles taut like coiled steel. "You've faced the impossible," she said, her voice carrying over the wind. "But the final trial is not just skill, nor courage, nor even the shadows of the past. The final trial is proving your heart. Can you protect what is mine, and what remains of me?" The cowboy's eyes met hers, steady and unwavering. He had ridden through fury, chaos, and treachery. He had faced death, betrayal, and fear itself. And yet now, it was not the desert, nor the canyon, nor even the stallion that tested him. It was the weight of human emotion, of trust, of responsibility. Suddenly a cloud of dust rose from the edge of the property. Figures emerged, 30 men, armed, brutish, hungry for revenge and conquest. They were the remnants of failed cowboys, men who had sought the stallion, Madeline's land, and her fortune, thinking her weakness would be their gain. Their eyes burned with greed and hatred, and in their hands, pistols and rifles glinted dangerously under the scorching sun. The cowboy mounted the stallion, muscles coiled, eyes scanning every movement. Madeline's heart pounded in her chest, but for the first time in a long while she did not fear. She had seen him conquer the impossible. And now, standing there with the beast beneath him, he radiated a power that commanded respect. The attackers charged. The stallion reared, throwing dust and heat into the air. The cowboy moved with unmatched precision, dodging bullets, twisting in the saddle, using the horse's raw energy to counter the chaos. His hands were steady, every movement fluid, almost inhumanly so, as he turned the tide of battle with calm. Devastating efficiency. One by one, the men fell, either by his calculated shots or the sheer force of the stallion's might. Rocks kicked up under powerful hooves, guns misfired under the harsh desert sun, and the chaos turned against the aggressors. The cowboy was no longer just a man. He had become a force, a living testament to skill, courage, and respect earned through trial by fire. Madeline watched, heart swelling as the final man fell back, defeated, fleeing into the horizon. Silence reclaimed the land, dust settling over the scorched earth. The stallion pawed at the ground, muscles relaxing finally, as if recognizing the end of its own test. The cowboy dismounted, sweat and dust coating his face, yet his posture remained unbroken, calm, commanding. He walked toward Madeline, eyes softening, but still carrying the unshakable strength that had seen him through every trial. "The horse," she whispered, her voice trembling. "The town, my past." "You've survived it all." He nodded, tipping his hat slightly, the corners of his lips lifting in a faint, knowing smile. "It's never about conquering," he said quietly. "It's about understanding, respecting, and never backing down when the storm comes." Madeline's eyes glistened with unshed tears. For the first time in a long while, she felt something she thought impossible. Hope. Not just in the cowboy, but in the future, in the land, in the life that could rise from the ashes of her sorrow. The stallion whinnied softly, nuzzling the cowboy's shoulder. The connection between man and beast was complete, not through dominance, but through trust and understanding. They had earned each other, bonded by fire, blood, and unyielding spirit. The townsfolk slowly emerged from the shadows, eyes wide, mouths silent. They had witnessed something extraordinary. A man who had ridden through impossible trials, tamed the untamable, faced the ghosts of the past, and emerged not just victorious, but honorable. Madeline extended her hand, a gesture of both gratitude and acknowledgement. The cowboy took it, steady and sure. No words were needed. They had faced the storm together, each test carving a story into their souls that would never be forgotten. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of fire and gold, the cowboy mounted the stallion once more. Madeline stood beside him, watching silently as he rode toward the horizon, the desert stretching endlessly ahead. He had proven himself a real cowboy, not by brute force, not by arrogance, but by endurance, respect, and courage. And in the stillness of the desert, the legend was born. A lone cowboy, a widow's challenge, and a stallion that had tested the limits of man and beast alike. The echoes of their story would linger in the wind, whispering to anyone who dared to listen. True courage is measured not by how hard you fight, but by how unshakably you rise when the world tries to throw you down. The town would never be the same. Madeline would never be the same, and the cowboy, he had become something timeless, a living testament to the unforgiving, beautiful and relentless spirit of the Wild West.